Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you all had your coffee. So, a little bit about myself. Obviously, before we begin, I'd like to thank Christine and Caitlin and everyone at Evisors for inviting me to present to you. My background. I started out actually as a theater director and a nonprofit executive, and marketing and promotions was what I did to pay the rent. But I found I was good at it. I enjoyed finding new ways to connect a product or solution to a marketplace that had heretofore been unaware that it wanted or needed that offering. And today's marketplace is especially exciting because it finally validates my long espoused contention that marketing is not about sales support, but about empowering the stakeholders in any transaction, but we'll talk about that more later. I'm an eternal student, and that's what a great marketing professional should always be, eager more to learn than to teach, and more interested in the mathematics of sharing than taking or giving. My previous roles in my professional capacity, I was the Chief Marketing Officer at Thompson, which is the parent company to Technicolor, RCA, Grass Valley, MPC, Screen Vision, a variety of companies. We had a variety of holdings. Now I was Chief Marketing Officer here in the U.S., overseeing the global technology expansion. Prior to that, I was the Vice President and Chief Strategist at Dream Theater, which was one of the world's largest digital production studios. I've got more than 20 years experience in marketing, and that's sort of a nutshell grab of my experience.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Nicholas. I think one of the things that people, are most interested in, or at least when they start their job search and look at marketing, is just getting a sense of, it is a very broad industry. So maybe you can spend a little bit of time talking about kind of the different elements of the industry and kind of how you see it playing out from a landscape perspective.
Sure. First of all, I want to address the question of whether marketing is an industry. I don't think it is. Industries churn out products in vertical models. Marketing can operate both vertically and transversely on a horizontal basis. It's tied into all the business units, specializations, and functions of any enterprise or initiative. So we're all marketers or being marketed to at one and the same time. And on a subconscious level, this can be exploited and become unpleasantly manipulative, of course, but on a conscious level, this is becoming increasingly empowering and exciting, I think. And just to give an example very quickly, as to why I think marketing shouldn't be perceived as an industry, we are all marketers, everybody, at one time or another. I mean, it even goes back to, for instance, in college. My roommate, and I'm sure there's some, university students on this call, my roommate had a date coming up, asked for my advice. I immediately asked, well, who was it? What things did she enjoy? Who had she dated in the past? That was my competitive analysis. I asked him what his expectations were, what his goals were. I was marketing. I was trying to connect and understand the two ends of the go-to-market process and trying to connect them by understanding both. The same thing happens if you're trying to take your sibling to a movie and ask them what movie they want to watch. You know who they are a little bit. You know the sorts of movies that are out there. You might do some more analysis of the marketplace, and then you try to create a connection. That's what marketing is about. So I don't think it's an industry because it crosses every industry out there, and when it's done properly, it's not an industrial proposition. Next, I sort of want to go into, when we look at this, I'll call it an arena. There are perceptions, there's a reality, and there's the potential that's emerging. So the perception of marketing has long been that it's a support activity, brochures, trade shows, events, PR, big smiles, and it's all undertaken by bushy-tailed, bright-eyed young college grads or fast-talking pencil pushers with a hankering to be, quote-unquote, creative. But once you subtract straight advertising investments, more companies invest an inordinate amount of executive time on marketing and inversely small proportions of money. CEOs and CFOs find it challenging to explain the function to shareholders because the shareholders just want an uptick in their holdings, and business units don't see the value in anything that's not demonstrably increasing their sales. And then employees find it annoying. It's a distraction to be asked to focus their attention on anything but their own specialization. So on the one hand, you've got this perception that marketing is just sales support. Next, you've got this reality that the marketing professional is constantly going to be working against that perception or the reality that the people whom they're trying to serve have a very different focus. And so often you will feel like a minister without portfolio, to give sort of a government analogy, or sort of the odd man out. And it's a very challenging situation to be in. And you have to develop very thick skin in this arena because of that. But the potential, governed by a variety of factors, social media, mobile communications, and the like, along with consumer demands for sustainable business practices, it's led to a point today where we have a rare opportunity. And that rare opportunity is beginning to manifest itself. Just looking at the entertainment industry, which is one of the main areas I work in, entertainment media, there's been massive changes in almost every studio and network in terms of how marketing is positioned, who's being elevated to lead the marketing, who they report to, how they operate, who reports to them. It's become a much more transversal offering, and people are finally realizing that you don't need to invest a lot of money in marketing, but you do need to invest infrastructure to allow a good strategic marketing executive or professional to deliver on the potential of their capability. So there's a paradigm shift going on right now in this arena, and it's going to permit people coming into marketing or seeking to come into marketing to present their personal value proposition much more effectively than in the past. In the past, it was very much, what do you need? Let me see if I can do it for you, please. Now it's very much, this is who I am, this is what I do, this is what I'm passionate about, this is what I'm good at. And that can create a very powerful point of connection. Sometimes it's specific, for instance, technology marketing, you have to have some technology understanding, or fashion or the like. Or it might be vector-oriented, or it might just be marketing, that you have a marketing degree and that you have some marketing experience and they're looking for a marketing generalist. But it gives the marketing professional or the incoming marketing professional a lot more opportunity to really bring themselves into the playing field, much more so than they have in the past, I think.
So, Nicholas, on that, do you see there being a big difference in the role of a marketer, let's say in a traditional CPG environment versus in on the media side, or maybe within traditional industry? So have you seen a growing importance of marketing in specific fields, or is it kind of across the board?
As I said, I said at the beginning, I'm an eternal student. I think all marketers need to be that. And I think that regardless of the industry that you're working in, a marketing team is always going to be massively in demand as that industry is in a growth stage, because the industry looks, or the enterprise looks to the marketing team to present the offering in as powerful a light as possible and to take advantage of all market opportunities. So there's very high expectations of the marketing team as there's a growth curve. The moment there's a downturn, marketing is the first division to be cut. It's just, that's how it's always happened. Simply because to date there has never been reliable metric measurement tools to say this is the value of marketing. Marketing enterprises have come up with a variety of metrics to say, here's the ROI, but they're really not reliable because marketing is a relationship function. It's about creating, maintaining, nurturing, leveraging, and maximizing relationships. And if we were able to accurately measure relationships, all those self-help books and marriage guidance books would no longer be in need. So this is something I think that is going to be an ongoing struggle, and we have to sort of come to terms with it. And whether you're working in an enterprise or a startup or media and entertainment, the biggest challenge, and it's one I think, as I said, is a paradigm shift, and I'm hoping that the different marketing leads in different industries are going to be able to meet this challenge. The biggest challenge is being able to clarify and hopefully codify, so there are some sort of metrics, what is the value of the marketing practice to a particular vertical. And it should no longer be judged on the same terms as a business unit or a sales team or finance and the like, because it has a different function, it has a different value, and I think you can use percentages, but you can't use dollars and cents. I mean, for instance, if you look at brand positioning, there was a big survey done about 5 years ago. It took 16 years to do the survey, and the results proved that the value of a brand as it related to stock valuation was anywhere between 7 and I think it was 47%, meaning that the amount of investment one put into a brand positioning and its presence in the marketplace could affect stock valuation anywhere between 7 and 47%, which is quite powerful. I don't think you could then go, well, that exactly translate to this many dollars. The stock is worth this much more because of the brand investment. You can't do it that definitively. But there's an unquestionable value in marketing, and as I said, it's transversal. And if we can find ways as marketing professionals to clarify that, I think we'll find that desire of what they call the bean counters, to get rid of that practice when there's a downturn. That desire will become mitigated, and thus we'll be able to soften the falls and hasten the rises when the turnarounds come.
Right. Okay, so let's say that the people on our call today are interested in pursuing marketing. What would you say, how would you go about researching it, learning about, like you said, it's a very broad field, it impacts kind of all industries. Where do you start?
I put together these, 8 bullet points as sort of a starting. One could create hundreds of bullet points, but I wanted to just look at a few. Starting with events, obviously, trade shows, both marketing-centric and vertical-focused. If you want to go to tech marketing, go to tech events, etc. What's interesting is a friend of mine, Catherine Ulrich, did a survey recently, and the results that she got back were quite interesting. Only 1 in 4 marketing VPs or CMOs is hired as a domain expert, meaning as a marketing executive. That they have a marketing background and they're hired into marketing because of their marketing background. Only 1 in 4. So the question is, where else do they come from? And about a third come from, well, rather a quarter, another quarter, come from a specific domain. So they come from a technology background and they go into technology marketing. About 15% come from a sales background. Another 15% come from strategic or analytical background. So there's really quite a diverse spread of resourcing that's going on when people are finding the person who's going to take on the marketing role or the marketing lead role in any one or another initiative. And so an interesting way for you to find out if you're the right person for that role or for that team is go to an event and get a sense of what are people talking about, what are they looking for, and what are they trying to sell already. Another way to follow, it's really about following the industry. So while marketing, as I said earlier, is an arena, you need to know the industry you're trying to go into. So LinkedIn, for instance, right now it has over 40,000 marketing groups. So if you type in marketing in LinkedIn groups, I think it's about 36,000 now. Marketing groups, discussion groups will come up. You need to get involved in those. You need to find the ones that you think are really cogent to what you're interested in, the industries you're interested in going into, the practice areas, and start getting involved in those discussions. Start following them, start contributing where you think you have some valued thought to contribute, and create dialogues. And from that, extend that into relationships. So maybe you want to learn from some marketing executives that you might want to consider mentors. Find the discussion groups they're in, and then join them, listen to them, add your 2 little cents, and then ask them questions in return. And at some point, you'll feel that you're ready to ask if you can connect with them. It's a very good way to build relationships, because while a marketing, as I said earlier, marketing professional is responsible for building relationships between the brand, the product and solution offering, and the marketplace, you as a personal marketing person have a responsibility to your own career to create and nurture relationships with your mentors and your peers. Then we move on to Google. Obviously, Google Alerts, careful Google searches are very useful because you can create RSS feeds and the like of information that you can pull to yourself and thus keep tracking industry trends and arena trends. But also Google+. Personally, I think Google+ is very nascent. It's very sort of early adopter right now, so it's not really that useful in terms of really following a market sector. But you might be able to find, depending upon the industry you're trying to go into, you might be able to find an executive or an individual within a particular industry who's on Google+, chattering away about their personal and professional likes and dislikes, and you can follow them much more openly than you can in Facebook. I mean, Facebook, for instance, created the subscription opportunity, but unless that individual is choosing to publicly broadcast their status updates, it doesn't matter. Whereas on Google+, you can tap into all of the stuff they're posting and follow them and get a good sense of what they're interested in, which can be great for an industrial study, but as an individual study, it's even better, because if you're going to interview at a company and you find out that the CMO is on Google+, you can find out a lot about them and a lot about their passions, and that can be very useful to you as you research that particular company or industry.
So on that, if you're interested in, let's say, let's take CPG, because it's one of the more obvious examples. Let's say you're interested in a company, you find a couple contacts either on Google+ or on LinkedIn, start following their discussions. If you are interested in reaching out to them, do you have any recommendations on how to do that such that your mail actually gets answered, or any thoughts on how to do it in a non-pushy but still kind of forward manner?
Well, as you can tell from my mumbling accent, I'm English, so we were scared out of our wits about being pushy. We are apologetic and self-effacing, but it's totally insincere. So I'm all for pushy as long as it's polite and respectful. I think that the best way to be pushy is to first create a presence. So LinkedIn, as I said, get involved in the groups before you try to connect with somebody. Google+, follow them quietly for a while so you understand what the connection points between you and the individual might be. Essentially do your own analysis of that individual that you're trying to connect with. Another place is Quora. I hope you all know about that. If you don't, you need to. It's a great resource for connecting with the thinking of influencers, as well as gaining insight into company cultures and market trends. So you go to Quora.com, and it's a question and answer site that is very, very useful into sort of following what's going on. And after you feel you've gained enough insight, it's really a matter of doing what Steve Jobs did when he contacted Mr. Hewlett. It's pick up the phone or find the email or find a way to get through to them. And you might not be getting through to them, but that's where it's a numbers game. You send out your feeler and hope for a response, but don't rely on one effort. Send out multiple ones and see who responds first. And just constantly be knocking on the digital doors of individuals that you respect, admire, or feel that you might be able to either give something to or get something from. As I said, it's an arena and it's a practice area that is all about sharing. So if all you're doing is trying to push yourself onto them, but you really don't have anything to give them, they're not going to be interested. And if all you're doing is trying to get something from them, such as a job or the like, again, they're not going to be interested. But if you're interested in sharing, if you want to ask them a question or ask their advice because you want to share in it, that's a much more two-way experience, and human nature dictates that everybody wants to be asked for advice on anything. Everybody loves to be asked for help and loves to be asked for advice, and as long as it's done in a respectful manner, most people will respond positively. They may be too busy, it may take them a while to respond, but if you do it politely and in a non-pushy fashion, but firmly, you are more than likely going to get some sort of positive response, even if it's, we're sorry there's no job, but we'll keep your resume on hand or anything like that. You're reaching out, you're creating a connection, and you write that in your little contacts database, and then you keep in contact, because at some point you will come across somebody and you can use that connection. You can say, yes, I was in correspondence with Mr. or Mrs. So-and-so 4 years ago, I remember that. And the fact that all they did was send you an email saying, I have nothing for you right now, all the best to you, that was a correspondence. So you can use and leverage every connection as you go forward. So it's very useful. Next one, obviously, Facebook, great way to follow brands. Study what you think they're doing right, what they could be doing better. It's very important to study both the winners and losers when you're researching an arena. In whatever phase they're in and in whatever space you want to be in. And all points along that spectrum from winner to loser have lessons to teach us. So it's very useful. Crunchbase, very useful again. As you start to hone in on the business that you want to get involved with, go to Crunchbase and they will give you revenues, competitors, new product releases, good and bad press, annual report data, org charts. They give you all of that. And so you can really start to hone in, because it's very important on the interview, which we'll talk about in a sec, that you demonstrate a knowledge of the enterprise or the startup or whatever the initiative is that goes beyond just, yes, I used the product once. So Crunchbase is very useful. And obviously sector publications, I mean, obviously there are marketing, communications, HR, finance, investor relations. Those are all transversal functions. And sometimes you're going to be vertically pushing a product into a marketplace or pulling that market closer to the value of the offering as a marketing executive. Sometimes the education of the consumer or client base to the value of the umbrella offering of the brand is what you're trying to do. And obviously that's a horizontal marketing function. And you don't know exactly, depending upon the nature of the market or the nature of the business, what you're going to need to do. So you need to be constantly examining sectors, the specific areas, whether it's technology or entertainment or fashion or automotive. You need to know vertically, write down, drill down who they are, what they're doing, what they're offering, and then also studying non-sector success stories. You know, if you're wanting to get, for instance, into the fashion marketing sector and you want to go join Ralph Lauren or such like, it doesn't hurt you to go study Ford and study their social media success stories, which have been quite good, and learn from that. And you may think, well, there's no application, but there is, because you can always steal great ideas. It doesn't matter what industry they're working in. And so it's very useful to read your sector publications, but also study the non-sector success stories, because you can learn from them and pull them in. So when you research marketing, understand that you're researching both the industry that you want to dive into, but also the arena that you're going to be working in, one and the same, vertical and horizontal.
And, you know, I know that you're quite involved in the online space. Is there any of your favorite, you know, marketing blogs or, you know, people that you follow on Quora that you would recommend if someone's interested in this space that they check out?
I'm not going to name names, because most of the people that present themselves as marketing or thought leaders in the marketing space, I consider, I don't like gurus. I feel that if you're a marketing executive or marketing professional, if you're good, you're demonstrating curiosity and passion and sharing that about whether it's products, offerings, best practices, whatever it is. When you start positioning yourself as a teacher saying, I know the answer, this is how you have to do it, I get really bored really quickly, because I know at that point you have nothing to teach me. So there's a lot of people out there with an embarrassingly large number of followers who are claiming the mantle of guru or expert, whether it's social media expert or marketing expert. There's no such thing. There's no such thing as a marketing expert or a social media expert. There's only somebody who's had lots of experience in the space and is continuing to exercise their passion and curiosity in that space. So when I recommend people to follow, I focus on follow professionals in other areas. And one of the tricks is, you know, people ask me, you know, what should I be reading? What should I be looking at? Who should I be following? And my contention is just focus on the mainstream publication areas, Quora, Facebook, LinkedIn, etc. And don't worry about the specialist ones, because there's lots of people who are investing lots of time drilling deep down to discover the latest trends at a very, very granular level. And they bubble those up very quickly. I mean, that's the beauty of digital communications, is within a couple of hours, if that, you're going to learn about the newest trend on a very mainstream channel or platform. Because those granular explorers, as I call them, are very proud of being the first to trumpet this new thing, whether it's a new product or a new site or a new iPhone app or whatever it is. They want to be the first one to tell the world about it, because they think that's where their value lies. So I'm quite happy to sit back and let them do all that work and to sift through all the crap that's out there and bring up some jewels, and for me to look at that and go, okay, instead of me sifting through 400,000 apps, I only have to look at 10,000, because the others have been already due diligence, and I don't have to worry about them. Very useful to me. I'm not interested in being the individual who finds out the very newest thing out there. I didn't buy the first version of the iPad or first version of the newest Android phone or whatever it is, because I let the early adopters spend ridiculous amounts of money on that, and then I find out what does the market really want to get interested in, and then I start to get involved. Because my interest as a marketing executive is in longevity of the relationship. It's not in making a big splash at the beginning. It's in creating a solid, strong, and secure relationship with the marketplace that I'm going into, because that's where the true ROI is, both financially, emotionally, and from a brand positioning perspective. So I don't say follow marketing professionals. I say follow thought leaders, regardless of the arena or industry they're in. If somebody is sharing information that you find compelling, inspiring, informative, or educational, they're worth following.
Okay, excellent. So just in the interest of time, we should probably continue to push forward. I know you've talked a little bit about why you went into marketing, and maybe you could talk a little bit more about kind of what attributes make a good marketer, and what people can do a little soul searching on themselves, and if they fit this criteria, maybe consider a career in marketing.
Okay. Well, as I said, I don't consider anybody who said they're a marketing expert is full of it, proverbially. I made this list because it's very easy to make lists, and I'll be honest with you all, I hate PowerPoint. I think it's much more important, if you're a good marketer, you should be able to present things to people without PowerPoint. You should be able to understand their pain point or their need before trying to present your offering. So foresight is very important. Having a sense of where they're trying to head and where your offering is going to bring value to them down the road is very important. Independence, simply because you're going to get a lot of pressure from the BU to do things the way they think is important, because their goal is to meet the objectives set before them by the leadership. So you need a certain independence, and you need some what I call self-everything, self-awareness, self-confidence, self-assuredness, all the self, because there's going to be a lot of pushing and pulling, and if you're going to be valuable to whatever entity you're representing, you need to sometimes be able to push back in the most polite but firm form possible. Obviously, you need hindsight, because your biggest lessons are going to be from the screw-ups. You need to be able to look behind you and learn from both your mistakes, your successes, and what's happened in the past to others, so that you can forge ahead and save time. So 360 degrees awareness, that's very important. You need to be able to tell a story. A marketer is a storyteller. We're all storytellers, regardless of what function we're in. Obviously, a salesperson, they're going to tell a story, but they have a goal. They need to close the deal, sufficient to be able to bring in the account executive or the like. So they have a specific goal. A marketing person doesn't necessarily have a concrete goal other than, as I said, creating and maintaining and leveraging and maximizing the relationship between the offering and the end user. And often the end user is unaware that that's who they are, and sometimes the offering is unaware who the end user is. So you need to have that awareness, and you need to be able to have the narrative to connect the two. And you need to be able to have the discernment to be able to avoid focusing in areas that aren't going to bring the greatest return on investment. Obviously, confidence and humility, they are not direct opposites from each other, and it's very important to have both. Intelligence, obvious; passion, obvious; and a sense of humor. For God's sake, please have a sense of humor, otherwise you're in deep trouble. That's why, obviously, if you look at the first letters on every single one of these bullet points, you'll understand that sometimes that sense of humor has to be considerably silly. I hope you get the slide afterwards if you haven't seen it. Moving on.
Yep. So maybe, I know we spoke a little bit about this on attributes of a good marketer, so maybe less time on this one, but what are firms looking for in terms of background or in terms of experience or qualities?
Okay. So this was a slide that was very kindly provided to me as sort of a sample by the good folks at Evisors, and I looked at it and I said, well, this is all very good, this is all very useful, but to me it's all very obvious. There are some very obvious things that firms are looking for. So with permission, I'm going to dispense with that and bring in these other bullet points and just touch upon them very, very quickly. Firms are looking for answers to questions they've not yet formulated. In the interview process or prior to the interview process, looking at your resume, in the cold call, they have questions already on their mind. If all you're interested in doing is finding out what those questions are and answering them, you're not going to make a mark. They're looking for somebody who's going to be able to present them with questions they never realized they had, but the moment you present them, they go, oh my goodness, yes, why didn't we think of that? And you provide an answer. And suddenly your value to them is nfold, exponentially raised, because that means that as a marketing analyst, you're able to find the questions that the client has even before the client's aware of them, because the development arc of a product or offering is often quite lengthy. Even in this release then iterate marketplace in the digital space, it's still quite lengthy. And if you're able to anticipate, to have that foresight that I mentioned earlier, that's of immense value to the business. Firms are looking for increased revenues. We've got to accept that that's the bottom line. It's about increasing revenues, increasing clients and customers. It's about having stronger visibility in the marketplace and increasing one's market share. If you have some solutions and some really solid ideas of how to get those, more clients, more market share, stronger visibility, and increased revenues, that's going to perk their ears up. They're looking for security, especially in today's marketplace. It used to be, the last 30 years, it was all about how can we grow. Now it's how can we survive. So if you can come to them and say, I have some solutions for stabilizing the brand in the markets you're in and showing them the markets they're in so that they realize that you understand their business, but also showing them some areas they can move into without undue investment or dilution, that'll give them the security they're looking for, and it'll also give them some comfort and growth potential. So basically, you as a marketing person have a responsibility to come in and give a firm a sense of security and comfort and knowledge that if they bring you on board, you're going to bring them far more value than cost. Your value has to far outweigh your cost. And if you can show that to them right at the outset, they're going to be inevitably interested because it would be against their business interest not to be.
Interesting. So what I'm taking from that, Nicholas, is that it's the onus on when you step into an interview, the onus is on the candidate to almost prove the value that they would bring rather than just answer a set of formulaic questions. It's if you were in charge, what would you change that would deliver increased revenues? What are the questions that have occurred to you? So that's a different take on it.
Yeah, basically, I'm going to throw up a bunch of questions in a sec. There are questions, and you need to know the answers before you go into an interview. There are formulaic questions, there are conventional questions, and there's a whole slew of them. But you need to always know more. You need to always bring something they weren't expecting you to bring. And if you waste too much time worrying about, well, what's that unexpected thing I need to bring, you're going to tie yourself in knots. You simply need to be a passionate student of the company that you're interested in joining and really immerse yourself in a transversal awareness of all the things they're doing, all the sandboxes they're playing in, all the R&D they're doing. Obviously, you don't need to know everything about everything. That's impossible. But you need to know a little bit about everything, and you need to be excited and interested in it. I still hold the contention that second only to the CEO, the CMO, and the marketing team are the portion of an industry that have to, by default, know more about the business than anybody else because they never know which part of the business is going to need to be tapped into to help improve the brand positioning and increase the go-to-market drive that is needed at any given point. So you really have to be, as I said, an eternal student, passionate about learning, passionate about absorbing as much information as possible, never knowing which piece of information is going to be relevant at any given time.
Right. Excellent. Okay, and yes, so just in the interest of time, the last thing that we'll touch on before answering a few of the questions that have come in are, is what would you expect in the interviews? You've touched on that a little bit, but maybe some of the other points.
Okay, so I just threw up 6 things that don't really mean too much. Once again, my love of PowerPoint, but identity challenge. Some interviews are comfortable, get to know you meetings. The hiring manager is just trying to see if there's a good cultural fit and you don't drool out of the left side of your mouth. But in others, the interviewer is purposely looking to see whether the candidate on paper is truly the candidate on flesh. And obviously, often they're going to challenge you. They're going to challenge yourself, your self-awareness, your security, your even your sense of self-worth. They can be quite brutal sometimes. They're trying to trip you up. Personally, I think that the value of the interview, in my esteem, is inflated, because I think that the resume can be inflated, and I think that the interview can be inflated. Anybody can prepare for both. It's sort of like whether it's American Idol or America's Got Talent or any of those other, talent shows. The first time you come in and present your skill set, you've prepared. You've prepared quite strenuously. So for me, the greatest value is when they get you in for like a day's visit where you talk to lots of different people. That's when you start to really show who you are and what your value to the business is. So the interview, you really don't know what to expect, because you don't know who's going to be interviewing you in terms of what's their interest. If they're an interviewing professional, they use a series of what they consider their tool set to try to catch you out, to try to get information from you so that they can adjudicate your potential value. And what they use to judge you often is potentially nonsensical. They'll often judge your wardrobe or your haircut, unfortunately even your skin color, the tone or pitch of your voice. They're trying to be able to come back to the hiring manager and say, we feel that this person is a good or bad fit because. Sometimes the interviewing person is an HR professional who's there, forgive me, to justify their position rather than to do their job. HR professionals now are in this paradigm shift themselves, very exciting paradigm shift, where they're actually finally getting empowered to become true leads in a company culture. So the good HR professionals are really working hard to create great value in human resources. But there are also, just as in marketing, some not so good HR professionals, and they're doing some very weird things in the interview process that I don't personally approve of. And I think you need to come in knowing that there's going to be a challenge to you, there's going to be judgment of you, and you can't worry yourself too much anticipating that, but you just need to be aware of that. But you can't worry too much about that, which is obviously easier said than done. There's going to obviously be questions, but there's also going to be opportunities, and you need to sort of be ready for those opportunities. You need to know coming in what are the things you want to say, and find those opportunities to make sure they're said before you leave. There's going to be frustration where, halfway through an answer, you're like, oh, I wish I didn't say this, but too late. It's a given, accept it, revel in it, wallow in it, whatever you want to call it. It's absolutely going to happen, and if you accept it before you go in that that's going to happen, it won't be as painful while you're in the process and you won't fall apart. And there'll be moments of disconnection as well, where you find that you're not connecting, you're not making your point, you see the eyes glaze over. You need to be aware of that before you go in and already have a plan of how to reconnect with the interviewer. If I may just
Nicholas,
go into focus less on what to expect and more on what to present. So you want to know how you want to come across visually. You want to know how do you want to be remembered and what do you want to be, what you want to achieve. If you think of those three things before you go in and have answers to them, you'll do much better. And as I said, there's endless questions. You can go onto the web and find thousands of questions specific to marketing, specific to a sector. Yes, you need to study up on these questions. You need to have a sense of what your answers are going to be. But you also need to be ready with some questions of your own. That is one of the most important things you can do in an interview, is have questions ready for the interviewer.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Nicholas. That's helpful. That's really a great perspective on it. I just had a question come in, actually, that's relevant to this. So when, if you're an international student preparing for some of these interviews, you may have less context on some of the brands that you'll be discussing within an interview. Is there any tips and tricks you'd recommend on, how to get smart on that, or how to, as an international student, to prepare and position yourself in some of these roles?
Well, to simplify the whole thing, there's two places you're going to be aiming for potentially. One is a particular company, and the other one is a marketing agency. Those are, the two simplest routes you might potentially be going toward. If you're going for a marketing agency, you're obviously going to study that agency and see what sectors do they specialize in. Most marketing agencies have specialist practice areas, whether it's tech or automotive or what it may be. Some agencies have quite diversified portfolios, but most are somewhat specialist. As such, you need to study that sector, and you need to come in with some knowledge of the brands that agency already serves, and you can just go to the agency's website and see, they have case studies usually, and going in and being an enthusiastic fan of some of those engagements demonstrates that you are an engaged fan of that agency, which, flattery always works, but also that you've done some homework, which is very important. But then also studying, well, who aren't they working with? And doing some, research online, trying to see, did they ever pitch to a company? And you can find that sometimes. Did they ever pitch to a company and were they unsuccessful? So if there's an agency that's working with Lexus and with Ford, but they wish they were working with Infiniti, and Infiniti went with it, just announced that they signed with such and such an agency who is a competitor, you can be pretty sure that that agency pitched and failed. You could come in and say, I really liked what you did with the Lexus last year on the IS300, blah, 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 but you know what, there's an Infiniti car coming out, and I know that such and such an agency got that deal, but I'd be really interested to know, did you guys pitch for that, and what was your pitch, because I have some ideas of my own of how that could have happened. And immediately you're telling them that you're somebody who goes out and pushes forward, because that's what agencies are looking for. And so you need, whether you're an international or U.S. marketing student, you need to have knowledge. And obviously if you're going international, if you're going to another country, if you don't have knowledge of the brands that agency is serving, or let's focus on the other channel, if you're going to a particular company and you don't have knowledge of their brands, being international and saying, well, I'm sorry, we don't have those brands in my country, that's not going to cut it, especially in today's marketplace where truly there is no such thing as international borders when it comes to marketing. You can find out the answers you need to find out. Go online, make some calls if you need to. You can find the answers you need to put yourself in equal contention with people that have grown up in that culture. There's no excuse, I don't believe, anymore of saying, well, I'm not from there, so I'm sorry. Unless you live in Iran and don't have access to Coca-Cola, you need to know all about Coca-Cola. And even if you do come from Iran, you can find out about Coca-Cola. So you need to know about the brand, and you need to be able to demonstrate you have knowledge. Otherwise, you have no place asking for a job representing that brand.
Excellent. Excellent answer. Thank you very much for that. Another question that's actually come in is regarding some of the technological changes. So with the advent of social media and a number of the other technologies that sit out there today, have the qualities of what people look for in a marketer changed, or is it still very much kind of the same set of qualities as they were 10 years ago?
I think it's always changing. I think one of the benefits and one of the curses of marketing is that I don't think too many people know what they're looking for in a marketer. I think that they have a sense that's on paper where, if you look at the job specs whenever there are job postings, must have this sort of experience, must have done this. It's all language in my mind. Case in point, I was hired from a digital production studio where I was a creative director and head of production. That was, my background. And, my skill set was in helping design websites and creative marketing campaigns through digital means. And suddenly I was interviewing for a position to become the U.S. marketing representative for the technology offerings of one of the world's largest digital technology service providers. I knew nothing about silicon chips. I knew nothing about content security. I knew nothing about intellectual property and licensing of patent portfolios. I knew none of those things, but that was what this business was about, that I was being asked to help represent to the U.S. media and entertainment industry. So I was being asked to make a complete leap into the dark. And thankfully, the senior executives at Thomson and Technicolor had enough insight into the value of marketing that they weren't expecting somebody to know everything about what they did. They were expecting somebody to be smart enough, curious enough, and be able to take up information fast enough, and obviously to have contacts into the marketplace they were trying to forge into, to be able to learn the things needed to be able to represent their offering to that marketplace. Often a lot of companies will go, well, you need to know everything about what we do, otherwise we don't want you marketing for us. And my contention is, no, I don't. I will learn that. If I'm any good I will learn that really, really fast because that's what I love to do. Thankfully, I was able to go to work for a company that trusted me to do that, and I did. I learned all about silicon chips. I learned all about content security. I learned all about IP&L. So I don't think a lot of companies really, really know what they're looking for. They'll put a bunch of things on paper and say, this is what we think we want, but there's nothing wrong with you coming in and saying, I don't have experience in this, but I have experience in these other things that you haven't mentioned, and I think they're more important because in the marketplace you're trying to access, there is this going on, and there's that going on, and your competitor is doing this and this, and I think it's very important you focus, and you're then telling them what they need in a polite and respectful but firm manner, and you're enlightening them to the necessity as expressed by the marketplace rather than the perception of what their need is as the purveyor of the solution. They're more interested, in truth, in what the market needs than in what they think they have to offer. And a smart CEO and a smart marketing lead will know that and will go, you know what, you're absolutely right, and thanks for that research, and I'm very interested in discussing that further with you.
Excellent. So another question that's come in is, one thing that you've described really well throughout this webinar is that you can come from a lot of different backgrounds, and marketing is a very broad industry where you're really being asked to draw on a number of your strengths. But if they do recruit from many different backgrounds, does it matter what people concentrate in university? Is it important to major in marketing, or is that less important nowadays?
Now you're going to make me have enemies in the colleges that are online. Dear professors, my apologies in advance for what I'm about to say. I do not have an educational marketing background. That's, I got a degree in English literature. I did not get an MBA. I decided when I graduated from college that I wanted to jump out there. And as I said, my background is in, my original background is in theater. I then gravitated towards marketing and promotions as I was asked to help with some launches of some international fragrances in the Midwest. And I did very well at that, and then I was invited by some other companies. My track record was what launched me into new areas. So I don't think there's any hard and fast rules. Obviously, there's certain industries and certain arenas where you need to have specific education in that skill set to be able to go on to serve as an executive or professional in that realm. But in marketing, I think it's useful, obviously, to have done case study and tracking of certain things in certain industries in an academic environment. I don't think it's necessary. I think the most necessary component to being a successful marketing professional is experience. So if a good college is able to create a curriculum that is going to give the student that breadth of experience within the academic setting, great, then I say go for it. But if all they're going to do is give theoretical case studies and that's it, where you come out going, well, in theory this works and in theory that works, then go join McKinsey, which is a great consulting firm, but what they're doing is they're sharing theory. The thing is, in today's marketplace, it moves so fast that it doesn't really have time anymore to study umpteen numbers of case studies and theoretical, possible scenarios. It's all about, this is what we think we do, this is what we think we have to offer, this is the market we think we're in, you need to help us. And you need to have a track record of knowing how to do the due diligence, competitive analysis, market analysis, etc., of studying that market and deciding, is it truly the best market to be in, other markets and deciding, are there other markets we can expand into, of knowing the business offering and knowing who the competitors are. You need to already have a knowledge of that. And so experience is the best teacher in doing that. So I'm all for getting a degree in marketing, just as I'm all for getting a degree in English literature. I think the process of taking time to learn how to learn is invaluable. That is for a marketing person, it is the most valuable thing. Learning how to learn is invaluable. But what it is that you're learning in that process, I don't think is as important as simply learning how to learn, if that makes sense.
Excellent. I actually couldn't agree with you more there. So we are running to the end of our time right now. I'd like to end with one final question from the audience is, looking at your career over the past 20 years, what has been the thing that you've enjoyed most about, about pursuing a career in marketing?
I never pursued a career in marketing. That's been the amusing thing that when I left Thomson, I sort of came to this realization. I discovered about 3 years ago that I was a marketing executive. And I was like, well, how did I get here? And I looked back over my career and I realized I got here simply because I accepted opportunities as they came along, and they all happened to be increasingly in the marketing realm. But obviously being head of production of a production studio, that's not marketing. Being chief strategist of a multimedia studio, that's not marketing. Being artistic director of a international performing arts festival, that's not marketing. But yet, as I said earlier, we're all marketers. So in all my capacities, whether they were formally marketing capacities or not, I was marketing. And I found that that was what I was really good at. And so when I was offered opportunities, when they started to focus on these things that I was really good at, I started to find myself gravitating toward them more and more. I'm now at a stage in my career where what I'm getting offered is, CEO, COO positions, and I'm looking at those because obviously I'm in a position right now where I'm sort of exploring the marketplace and trying to decide, do I want to stay as a consultant or do I want to go back into the enterprise or into an initiative that I find exciting? And again, I'm finding myself the eternal student, where I want to join somewhere that's going to allow me to learn, because that's where my value is. If I can jump in somewhere that's going to allow me to really chew a really, really meaty proposition and get involved in learning something that I can then share, I don't have to become a teacher. God forbid I ever become a professional teacher. A professor, an academic, fine. But to pretend that I know everything in the professional marketplace is the death knell of my value. So anybody who's looking to become a marketing professional, my suggestion is don't ever try to get yourself to a position where you become a marketing expert, because that's where you're going to be really, really close to unemployment.
Excellent point. Excellent point. So with that, I'm going to say thank you very much, Nicholas, for taking the time to talk to everyone today.